Waking up, breaking out. This is what it's like to be. Okay, sorry. I'm not gonna sing a supersonic song now every time I start a video. That would be fucking annoying. Okay, I'm gonna be reading Believing Stories chapter 2, which is called Waking. The first was called Note, by the way. And well, I'm mighty sorry because my spelling is so freaking bad. It doesn't sound like English at all. But anyway, I'm gonna be continuing. I don't care. Okay, well. Believing Stories by TypeWriterError, Chapter 2, Waking. Celestia woke up again. The first thing that she remembered her... Wait a second. The first thing that reminded her she was not in Equestria... reminded her. The first thing that reminded her she was not in Equestria was the fact that her room smelled like the breakfast that had been placed on a small card table. I gotta read slower. On a card table. She pushed herself off her mattress and acknowledged, for the first time since her transformation, that it was a nice change to not have her wings and horn get in the way as she crawled out of bed. But what was wrong with her? Why wasn't she waking up before the sun? She looked at the barred window and saw the clouded sky, but still could see it was late morning. How could she oversleep like this? Then she remembered. Every morning since her return, Luna would come in from her nightly rounds of carrying the moon over the sky to wake her sister up. Though she was embarrassed to admit it, Celestia had become lazy about getting herself up in the morning. The reminder of her sister knocking at the door, poking her head in, and then asking if she was awake, clenched at her chest in a way that never seemed to loosen, even with tears. Celestia coughed and sobbed so deeply she collapsed onto the floor of the room. That's not good for you, Celestia. Luna, she choked to a room that echoed her in such a lonely taunt. 1,000 years of separation had forced Celestia to promise she would never again separate herself from her little sister. No matter what. What had broken that promise? She wasn't sure how long she laid on the floor, crying. She wasn't sure how long she continued to lie, even after she had stopped. But while she was lying on the floor, a nurse with a strict black bun of top... what? What am I reading? While she was lying on the floor, a nurse with a strict black bun on top of her head and a permanent sneer in her grey-green eyes, came in and switched her breakfast tray for a lunch tray and a scoff. Celestia stared blankly up at her as she turned and addressed her. "Happy to be back?" she quipped, and left the room, shutting the door behind. Celestia closed her eyes and moved her cheek to a spot on the floor that wasn't wet with her tears. Was this how it would be for the rest of her life? Tears for breakfast, tears before bed. How much more time did she have to cry to herself? Cry to herself. Celestia sat up and pulled herself up to the window ledge. The light hit her face and reflected a ghost of it into the glass in front of her. Celestia's hands grabbed the edges of the window frame as she stared at herself. She was so still for the longest time. She almost could convince herself she was staring at a picture. Then she would blink or move and remember. Remember that the face in the reflection is hers. She knew her hair had been cut short. It was no longer the long waves that ceaselessly rustled with magic. It was short, really short. Her hair and her eyebrows and eyelashes were all strawberry blonde. Her face was thin in a way that reminded Celestia that she was hungry. Her eyes were no longer purple but brown. Everyday brown eyes with short, human, red hair. Her eyes were still bloodshot. The red that told of her crying was gone though. She looked so tired. Her lips were so pale they almost blended into the color of her almost white skin. At least that was somewhat familiar. Man. The door to the room opened, and the doctor from before entered. "Miss Marlowe, how are you doing today?" He stopped short when he saw her. For a moment there was a flash of embarrassment on his face as he looked away from his absent patient. He shifted as he tried to speak multiple times. Celestia just glanced back at herself again. "Have I always been like this?" she asked. She sounded so old. No, not old. Defeated. "Well, no. The treatments have some side effects. I'm sorry about that, but..." He stopped again when he looked back at the woman, staring at her own reflection without wanting to believe that she was seeing it correctly. He couldn't find anything else to say, so he simply sighed and left the room. Celestia stared at herself for another few seconds and started laughing. "Is this it?" She laughed hysterically. "Is this me for the rest of my life? One sad woman staring at herself in the window, crying. You're better than this, Celestia. You are the Queen of Canterlot." She's a princess, goddammit. Anyway, you are the Queen of Canterlot, and not just Canterlot. You are Queen of all Equestria. She didn't care. She was screaming at herself. She wanted the noise. She continued. "If you can get back, you don't do this again. If you can get back, you don't deserve to be queen. Besides, Luna is powerful enough. She'll find you." What? "She'll find you. And Twilight is there. She's smart. She sent you a letter." Celestia checked her shirt pocket for a note that must be there. Certainly, her faithful student has been able to reach her. The pocket was empty. "She'll send it later today. She'll ask you where you are and tell you how she'll try to find you. She'll find you. Don't worry. She'll find you. She'll find me." They'll find me. They'll find me. No letter.